Okay, now we take the last section of this unit of the course, and that is philosophical thinking and philosophy of life. Okay, so the question is, how does the philosophical thinking method help us in the question and discourse of the human person? So, philosophical thinking challenges students to pay attention to the fundamental questions of life and human aspiration. So that is why this unit in the whole context of the course, Philosophy of Life, is to train the students to having this philosophical thinking attitude and spirit, and then employing this spirit and attitude in reflecting on their own individual life and human life as a whole, which is very important, because everything we're going to do at the end of your university study, you used to live. So how are you going to reflect on your own human existence? So this philosophical thinking gives you the attitude and the tool to do that. When students through philosophical thinking become people who aspire to lead a happy life, society and nations will be happy places to live. So, Aristotle in his Ethics Eudaimonia, talked about the goal, the ultimate goal, as now translated as happiness, as flourishment, as flourishing, as blessedness. What is the ultimate end of the human person? This kind of question is already a philosophical question. Now, what is philosophy of life? There are two ways of looking at philosophy of life. The first one, when you look at life simply as biology, from the biological aspect, so every living thing. So in this sense, philosophy of life is a kind of theoretical biology. Like today, what is research going on artificial life, trying to understand what is common among plants, other animals, and humans, all living things. Why, are they all called living things, and these are not called living things? So that is on that level, but that's not where we're operating on. We're talking about the philosophy of human existence. So philosophy of life is the philosophical reflection of human existence, human life. It is a rational and critical discourse on human existence and the consequences of being a human person. Because being a human person, there are a lot of consequences. One, you'll be tired, you'll be hungry, it's a biology. Sleep, you want to be loved, you want to love, you want to seek knowledge, you want to have a degree, you want to have a good job, you want to have a good life, you have family, you want to have a good relationship with your family, you're going to marry, you want to marry, you don't want to marry. So you talk about pain, suffering. We always hear about typhoon, earthquake, there are a lot of disaster, war, conflicts. This is human beings. Animals, they don't go to war as we do. In terms of really strategic war, fighting for a cause, for a reason that is clear. In the animal world, they can struggle for things, but to be strategic in fighting and to be clear that I'm fighting for this. The whole problem of peace in the world. So these are the consequences of being a human being. So a rational and critical discourse and reflection on these is very important. It raises fundamental questions such as the meaning of life, death, the place of human person in the cosmos. Are we just like every other biological beings? Is there something special about humans over and above every other thing in the cosmos? Are we of the same existential level? Is there something unique about the human person? Is there meaning to life? Or do we just eat, drink, sleep? Is there meaning? Is there an end to human existence here on earth? Now, how do we explain suffering and then ultimately death? Is death the end of the story about each and every one of us here on earth? What happens after death? Is there afterlife? You know, as religion generally says, you know, what happens? These kind of questions. How relationship between the other people? What kind of society do we want to have? These are fundamental questions that, you know, we ask. How can we have a just society? You know, these kind of questions. Who am I? Who am I? And what kind of person do I want to be? So these are fundamental questions. Mostly you ask yourself. You ask this question yourself. And your duty as a university student is to ask this question. After 4 years in the university, what do I want to do with my life? What kind of person do I want to become? Philosophy of life, this course helps us to be disposed to asking these questions. It makes an effort to answer these fundamental questions in a clear and unbiased manner. It also focuses on the good and the beautiful life. So, what kind of value do I want to bring to my world, to my society? You know, what kind of person do I want to be? What does it mean to be a good person? What is a beautiful life? What is a happy life? These are fundamental questions in philosophy. Now, a reason for a philosophical life, according to Socrates. You know, we know in one of the dialogues of Plato, this image is from the internet. We have this very popular image of the death of Socrates. The death of Socrates. So, you know, some of his disciples, I guess maybe the guy who couldn't look at Plato, who couldn't look at Socrates taking the hemlock, the poison that killed him, you know, maybe Plato. So, but anyhow, we know this image, the popular image about the death of Socrates. Socrates, before he died, Socrates was condemned, you know, because for corrupting the young. It's a popular, you know, story. Most of us know about, even before studying philosophy. You've heard about it. So because Socrates went about challenging the young people, everyone actually, both young and adults, young and old, but mostly the young people, not to take anything just that way, like what we said about independent thinking, you know, asking questions, being critical, being skeptical. So Socrates was asking the young ones, ask questions. Don't just do things because your parents or it is conventional, you know, or because they said this our traditional religion says that or not. Ask questions, be critical, be skeptical, seek knowledge, you know. So because of this kind of questions, Socrates was accused of corrupting the young. And then he was condemned to death, to die. And by drinking what, the poison. But before Socrates took it, that's what you see. You see the image there. He raised his hand and had something to say. And let me just read it. I want to make my argument before you, my judges, as to why I think that a man or a woman who has truly spent his life or her life in philosophy is probably right to be of good cheer in the face of death and to be very hopeful that after death he will attain the greatest blessing yonder. From the Plato's Dialogue, Phaedo, 64a. So, what is the point? We're talking about a reason for philosophical life. But of course, this is on the background on Socratic Platonic anthropology, understanding of the person. However, but the point is this. For Socrates, philosophy or philosophizing helps to purify the soul. It helps to already prepare the philosopher for death. Because Socratic Plato understands the person as actually his or her form, which is the soul. And this soul is housed in the body, or if you like, imprisoned in the body. So by philosophizing, you are actually, because philosophy is a rational activity, it's an intellectual activity. So by philosophizing, you're actually purifying your soul and training your soul to be separated from your body, which is what death is. For them. Death is a separation of the soul from the body. It's the liberation of the soul from the body. So death is something that the philosopher, in philosophizing, by focusing on his or her soul, is purifying and liberating the soul, or preparing the soul to be separated from the body. So to that event, what it means is that, so when death comes, Socrates argues, anyone who has truly engaged in the philosophical activities, engaged in the philosophical activity, is not supposed to be afraid of death, because all the philosophers have been doing in philosophizing is actually to separate itself, which is the soul, from the body. So in other words, extending this position and this thought is to say that there's a value in philosophy. There's a purifying value. The philosophy brings meaning, and philosophizing brings meaning to human life. It makes the human person to think that there's something. Life is not just all about eating and drinking. Life is worth reflecting on. And that is what Socrates tells us. So when the philosopher, by philosophizing, is engaged in thoughts, which are beautiful things. So these thoughts, not all exactly from Joseph Pieper's work, however, they reference these two books of his, could help you it will expound more what we have discussed at the course of this unit of the course. So we shall have more discussions in subsequent classes. Thank you.